or to buy a Blu-ray, or I don't even know what they come on anymore. I buy everything digitally if I buy it at all. So there it goes. Now, there's that. You can also, email Jordan. You can make a donation over there. You can take a look at the public part of the website. You can interact with Jordan and take a look at some media which is available there in the front area. But the website is constantly a work in progress. Even the Research Society has many terabytes of information waiting to be added to it. So JordanMaxwellShow.com is the place to go. Now, you got to put it all together. JordanMaxwellShow.com. That is the only website that is actually Jordan Maxwell's. So, without any more further ado or announcements or promotions or whatever, Jordan, how are you tonight, sir?
I think okay, but we'll find out soon enough. But thank you for having me back on.
Oh, listen, having you back on, I'm waiting here for the opportunity to bring you back on. I love having you on, Jordan. We've done this series on religion. As I keep putting them up on YouTube, now I did them a little slower this time, but even as I keep putting them up on YouTube, different people are discovering these things that have not heard it before. Some people have heard it. Some people appreciate the refresher. Some people are hearing different things that they don't believe they've heard before. I know that this has been a unique series because we've definitely gotten a lot of crowd participation, which is something that doesn't always happen with these types of shows. Of course, after you've done this for so many years, my friend, I'm very sure that, nothing is really all that new to you, but I really enjoyed this, and we are on the, I think is this 17th or 18th episode here in the series. I'm going to have to take a look back. I think it's the 17th, though, episode in the series, and yikes, it's been action-packed, and we've definitely gone through a lot of things, and like I said, guys, if you send an email to me, or if you send me a question on Twitter, or if you go in the live chat room at Ocelli.com, your questions, your inquiries, your commentary even, I will add it into the show, present it to Jordan, and, I can't guarantee you any sort of results as to how it'll go, but I can guarantee you that if it's a relevant question, it'll be added into the show. And I think this is a fair enough concept that we've gone forward with for the most part here. Anyway, Jordan, what are your thoughts on the direction we should begin with while I try to gather up some of these questions? Because, of course, Windows made me reboot right before I go live to air, so had to scramble to pull things together, and now I got to try and pull up the emails.
I have to do the same thing. I have to scramble on every show because I always have to reboot to make sure my Skype is working correctly, etc. And I think it's probably just as well we start on one corner and work out and see where it goes, because there's so much to talk about in relation to the kind of information I deal with. I've always been interested in mysteries, and history itself is a mystery without understanding how history works, where, secret societies and fraternal orders are working all around us. I just saw today that there was a bombing in France. I don't know if it was today or yesterday or what, but it's a bombing in France. It's obviously the work of a group. And so that's the point I'm making when I talk about secret societies. There are different groups. We know that we call them organized crime syndicates. Secret societies are dealing with organized crime. We are also, we have all kinds of fraternal orders operating around the world. But the one thing that most people don't appreciate is how our world is being run for us by secret people who we don't even know exist. We don't know who they are, and we'll never hear their names. The people who really run this planet, you will never, ever hear their names. You will never see a picture of them. So all the people that we do see in the so-called Illuminati world of the masters who run this planet, these are all middle-class people. They're not the real bosses. The real bosses you will never see or hear from or know their name or anything else, because they don't need you knowing anything about them. They are in control, they make the decisions, and that's the name of the tune. So that's why I've been very interested all my life in who really is running the planet Earth, who really owns us, and where does all this stuff come from, our religions, our military, industrial operations around the world. It's just an incredible story of secret people running our world for us. And we don't care because we don't do anything about it. And, of course, as obvious, there's not much we could do about it, even if we did know. So there's more poor and working-class poor people on the earth than there is the elites. And if the poor people were to stay together and stand together, instead of trying to destroy each other, if we stood together, we would be a profoundly important force for good and for exposing what's going on. And so there's a lot of good people like yourself who are trying to help others to wake the world up to what's really going on. So that's what we're doing here. We're just trying to keep you awake and awaken you to the fact that the world is not what you think it is. Nothing operates the way you think it does.
Well,
and so that's what I've been trying to do.
Oh, I know it. And let me interrupt you with something here, because this is a fascinating thing that keeps coming. Hang on just a second here. Let me adjust the microphone because it's giving me a little trouble. The issue comes up all the time. A lot of people say, well, listen, you guys talk about these things and you lay them out. And then when you talk about what it is we can do about it, it seems pretty hopeless. We're all doomed anyway. Why bother if we're all doomed? Now, here's the interesting kind of conversation I started to get into, and I want to know if you feel the same way that I do, that this is the best understanding that I can possibly put forward about it. And it is this. And also I have a key question I just dug up here, which somebody sent me some weeks ago, related to Hiram Abiff, by the way, and a few things connected to that. But before I get there, overall philosophy, whereas, listen, if there's nothing we can do about any of this, then why talk about it? Here's the reality of the situation, Jordan, and I want to see if you agree with what it is that I see. At any moment, in truth, there is a huge difference between what can be done and what will feasibly be done on the planet. For instance, there's absolutely no reason for anyone on this planet to suffer for lack of food, shelter, clothing, any resource. That's just broad strokes reality. Now, the circumstances that have been created, the systems that have been put into place, the individuals who wish to control scarcity, now, they may have all sorts of ideas about how this cannot be done, but the truth is that even, those who scream about overpopulation and how there's way too many people on the planet and everything else, and I believe that they have been sort of programmed to feed into an agenda to help out with the idea that it's a good thing when so many people die off and suffer. The reality is it's not necessary. There is enough for everyone on this planet right now to not be hungry, to not be homeless, to not be without resource. It's just that simple. Now, does that mean that the circumstance is going to emerge tomorrow? Does that mean that effectively we could see, well, theoretically, yes. Theoretically, if we could all make an agreement to stop killing each other, if we could all theoretically make an agreement that distribution among everyone to be equal and all that kind of, that could happen. Now, I know some people are out there going, oh, you sound like a socialist, communist, whatever, ism. I'm not talking about isms. I'm not talking about anything other than hard facts. There's no reason that this could not be done except for these systems and these other isms which have been put into place. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? No. But could it be done? Yes. So here's the truth about what it is we can do about this system that is in place here. I do believe that if en masse, all of us, the rest of us, not the middle managers, and not the elites, obviously, but if all the rest of us collectively turned our force into one particular direction and decided that we were going to abandon the system as it stands and decided that we were going to cooperate and do some of those things I was just talking about, all of this would become meaningless overnight. Could that happen is another question entirely. But is it something that theoretically could be done if you could? Yes, it is, isn't it? So it's kind of a hard place to be in when you see something that can be done. But is it likely? Is it really, truly possible in the world in which we live? Well, that's another story. Is that one of those struggles you kind of have internally every now and then where you got to say, well, listen, I know that we can change all this overnight, but will it get done? Can it really, feasibly, realistically get done? Is that something that you go through as well?
Yes. Yes, I have been concerned with that all my life because I know that there are things we could do as humans because we're all very, very powerful. Even the scriptures showed that. Even God saw that in the Bible. It says that it says God looked down from heaven upon the earth and saw that the thoughts of men are bad all the time, but that at the time when they were building the Tower of Babel, God said, if you leave mankind alone, there's nothing he can't do. And, he can do whatever he wants to do. And so you divide the language so that, he can't do what he wanted to do. You divide the language at the time of the building of the Tower of Babel, because whatever it is that mankind collectively decides they want to do, they can do. And we've decided a long time ago we want to go into space. Well, now we're in space. We're out there doing things that we are not even told. The people are not even being told what we are capable of doing and are doing right now in space. And so I think, yes, we could change the world, but the last time we actually had a legitimate way to actually change the direction of the human family was back in 1770s when the founding of the United States of America. It was Thomas Paine, the guy who actually came up with the idea and promoted the idea of an American Revolution and come up with the idea of signing a Declaration of Independence and a Constitution. It was Thomas Paine who actually was the brain behind what we call the Great Awakening of the American Revolution to found the United States of America on the basis of law and reason and logic and intelligence. And he said, Thomas Paine wrote, that we now, in 1776, with the founding of the United States of America, he said, we now have the opportunity to completely restart the whole world over again. Because they realized that setting up a country that was based on the freedom of the individual and protecting of individual rights of individual people, that the freedom of mankind would explode all over the earth and it would change the whole destiny of the human race if we were allowed to be free. But this is precisely what the European royalty did not want. They're not interested in their slaves being free. And so that's why Martin Luther King was, one of his famous quotes was that slaves have never gone to their masters and asked for freedom. They don't do that. The only way you get freedom is you take it. You demand it. You demand your freedom. And you do something about it. And that's what happened in 1776. A lot of people decided they'd had enough of European royalty with kings and queens riding around in golden chariots and flipping their cigarette butts on you and your children. And so they've decided they've had enough. And that's what Thomas Paine said. We have in our hands now the opportunity to start the whole world all over again because they believed that there was a God who was divinely orchestrating the founding of the United States of America on the basis of human dignity and freedom. And it would have worked. It was on its way to working. People were flocking to this country from all over the world at the founding of this country. People were coming here and then spending whatever they could, whatever they had to get here, to be a part of the great American experiment. But the only problem is that the laws did not stick. What the founding fathers said they wanted and didn't want, the enemies of this country got around it. They went around the founding fathers. And therefore the same tyranny and the same criminal elements that were running all over Europe, and the criminality of Europe and the elites who were running the show in Europe actually came to America. And the secret societies and the religious orders of Europe, they came to America knowing that you cannot let these people found their own country on freedom and liberty and do their own thing, because they're going to affect Europe, it's going to affect the whole world, and it's most likely going to affect all the royalty of the world. Royalty is above the world. And if you let the common working class people decide that they want to be free, you're going to have a serious problem between the millions and millions of working class people against the handful of the royal people who don't have to work. They let you work for them. And so the royalty of Europe realized that if you let these Americans do what they're doing, there's going to be trouble galore. You're going to have more problems than you could even imagine for the elites. So you cannot let these people do what they're talking about doing. You've got to stop them in their tracks. Well, as it turns out, the same people that were destroying the peoples and the human race of Europe and the rest of the world came here to America and got themselves set up, and they came over with money and power, political power and money, and moved into our little experiment we call America, and they started buying into our system and collectively buying into our world that we were building. And they now run America. So we didn't follow through. We knew who our enemies were. We fought them to even found this country. But I'll be damned if they didn't come in later quietly. They moved in, and they've destroyed our country. They've destroyed our people. They've destroyed our future. They've destroyed everything. And the reason why is because they were the royalty, and they didn't want America to be alive. They didn't want the American people to do what they were almost ready to do, and that is to take over the world for freedom and liberty and justice. And so the founding fathers, most people don't know this, but the founding fathers of this country realized who the real, legitimate, bottom line enemies of America and human dignity and freedom are. And they said they would not allow, this was in the original founding of America, that there were two groups that the founding fathers did not want in this country. If you go back and look at the history of America, you will see there were two very large and powerful organizations that the founding fathers did not want to have anything to do with, and they did not want them in this country, and you couldn't have them in this country. And that was the Catholic Church. The Vatican was the single biggest enemy of freedom, dignity, and honor the world has ever known. It was a Roman system, a dirty and fascist Roman system of totalitarianism and fascism and slavery in Europe. It was the brains behind the wars, the revolutions, the violence, the bloodshed of the world. The Vatican. The Vatican was the biggest criminal organization on the earth, and the founding fathers of America realized that, and they said that Catholic Church will not be allowed in this country, period. They want nothing to do with it. People can have their own religion, fine, but the Catholic Church as an organization cannot operate on American property, on American land. They did not want the Vatican having anything to do with this country. Why? Because they knew the Vatican is run by a man we call the Holy Father. And why is he holy? Because he represents the God. So he's a Godfather. You understand what the terms mean. And so we allowed the Catholic Church to come into America a long time ago, and with it came the Mafia, La Cosa Nostra, all the underworld organizations, which are all coming from the Catholic religion, and Southern and South America, Central America. And when America was being founded back east with New England, and of course when Rome moved into Britannia, the Roman Empire moved into Britannia, or the UK, the center of operation for Rome in England was York, England. York, England was the city where Rome officially run the United Kingdom. So Rome actually was dominating the United Kingdom, the UK. And the city where Rome operated from was called York, England. And so today we have something called New York. New York is the Empire State. It represents the Roman Empire. It's the Empire State in New York, the dirtiest, filthiest political underworld organization of organized crime the world has ever known. It is out of New York that the Communist Party has come. It's where the drug running and the drugging of Western civilization goes through New York, the international banking cartels, all of the pagan, filthy, and dirty religions coming out of the Roman Empire, the whole entire complex that we call the United States government today is a Roman fascist Jesuit system of tyranny, and people do not know, they have no idea in the world what is going on in religion on the earth today. All we know is that we just do what we're told to do, because when we're born, we're brought into a system, and we grew up in a system where we never questioned anything, we didn't know anything, and it's just as well we didn't question anything because the adults around us didn't know anything. So nobody can tell you. And the very few people who were wise and intelligent and wise and well informed who did know, they will be killed off. Slowly but surely they will be thrown into prisons and killed off by the conspirators who are trying to overthrow our great country. And this is what's going on today. New York is the center for all of the filthiest, dirtiest stuff going on the earth today. It's the Empire State, the Roman Empire. And today the Empire State is now in decline, just like the Roman Empire was in the 5th century. We are now, as America, in decline. We've lost our freedoms. We've lost our basis for operation. We've lost our industrial. We've lost intelligence. We've lost everything. We've just lost virtually everything that we built up and had going for us at the founding of this country. We've lost it all because the people who are trying to destroy our country are the Jesuit Roman Catholic system in America. You need to wake up and find out who your enemies really are. The Pope wears a Pope's mitre, that strange headdress the Pope wears. It represents a god named Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dagon was a Phoenician, Canaanite, old ancient god from the ancient world 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Has nothing to do with Jesus, has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. The Vatican does not represent Christianity or Jesus. It represents Rome. All roads lead to Rome. Our governmental systems, our corrupt societies, our corrupt laws, drug addiction, alcoholism, murder, violence, wars, all of the corruption of the human race is now centered in New York, the Empire State. And therefore, we now have the United Nations. a conspiratorial apparatus to destroy individual countries and peoples all over the world. United Nations, the country itself is dying because of the UN. It's an incredible story about betrayal and how we got into the mess we were in, and I don't think there's any hope for us to get out of it because the people love the holiness of the church. They love to go to church and worship the Lord, and they think that they're doing something wonderful and holy, and it makes them feel well, it makes them feel good, never realizing for a moment what the church really is, where it really came from and how it grew out of the Roman Empire. And today, Washington, D.C. is, in fact, the center for the new Roman Empire. And the brains and the money and the organization comes out of New York, the Empire State. My God, what a story there is to tell if people would wake up, but they're not going to wake up because they would much rather have their religions and their holiness, that, like the Bible says, you have chosen for yourselves your teachers. People are not interested in what God is doing in the universe. They're interested in what their teachers tell them. So they go to, and you can't even be a minister in America unless you go to a college and get a degree from the government. It has to come out of New York and Washington, D.C. to get a degree before you can be a minister. So they have Christian universities. All I'm saying is that you need to wake up to who your enemies really are. Your enemy is the religion that you practice today in the world today, is referred to as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All three are religions of an ancient pagan world. And this is what happened in the ancient world. It's happening today. The more we change, the more we stay the same. We're still killing each other over religion because that's what religion is. It is a murderous, death-dealing place on the earth that is destroying the individual and destroying countries. We need to wake up and find out who is really behind the elites. And who do the elites? We talk about the Rothschilds. Well, the actual history of the Rothschild banking family is that they were the bankers for the Vatican. They were handling the Vatican's money. So when you talk about how wealthy and rich the Rothschilds were, they were wealthy and rich because they made money off the Vatican. The Vatican was running the whole entire Roman Empire. Since Caesar fell in the 5th century A.D., the Vatican has for 1,600 years dominated Europe. And for 1,600 years, Europe has dominated the world. All roads lead back to Rome. The Catholic Church is, in point of fact, the outward sign of a very powerful ancient secret society that founded Rome and has been officially destroying our country and our freedoms and everything that we've worked for in this country, and the people love it. The people think it's so holy, they crawl on their knees to the Pope, never realizing he represents God and he's the Holy Father, he's a Godfather. You better wake up and find out who your enemies really are.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, Jordan, what's fascinating to me is that you brought up the Roman Empire several times there, right? And some people have a very superficial view of what the Roman Empire actually was, right? And it's amazing to me because it is something that stretched over centuries and went through various sort of incarnations.
That's right.
And because I've studied Roman history extensively. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on Roman history, but I went through it enough to understand that at one point it seemed as though there was a society which was not based on the ruling classes doing exactly what they were doing, but that changed, and they borrowed from the Greeks, and obviously there is a Greek element to this as well, which is never really discussed all that often when it comes to the Roman Empire. Just, well, stylistically it was similar. No, there's something else going on there.
That's right.
And there's a legendary sort of mythos connected to the formation of the nation-state of Rome. Just like a lot of other nation states on the planet, apparently, huh? It's really interesting, but that took hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds. I mean, the span of the Roman Empire, how far is it? It's, 700-800 years easily that the Roman Empire stood, depending on which form it was in. Of course, during its decline, it was completely divided. You had, corruption had entirely eaten even the superstructure of the elitist classes running things. Even that was everything was in a downward spiral by the time we had the Eastern and Western empires, right? Various reformations. We've seen that happen to what we call the United States, but it's only been 200 and, less than 50 years, right? It's almost like, say, 1/3 or maybe even a quarter of the time of the Roman Empire's existence that the United States has gone from this mythical formation. And I'm not even stating that the history, because here's the problem with Roman history. It's very difficult to unpack because I think they've hidden a lot of it. It seems as though unless you're culturally connected to certain things, you don't have a lot of insights as to what went on. It's been glorified unnecessarily in some ways. It's been sanitized. Oh, gee, wait a minute. Same thing has happened to American history. So it's very difficult to really follow what happened here. But when you're talking about a secret society that pre-existed the Roman Empire, it's not as though it was founded because of the Vatican. A lot of people think that the Roman Empire was founded, in order to bolster the Vatican. The Vatican, the Roman Empire, these are merely symptoms of something that existed previous.
That's right.
And I don't know really what the ultimate root is. Now, there's a legendary sort of root to some of the secret societies that was brought up here. And actually, two different guys named William sent in questions related to this. And I want to get to it right now because I think it's going to be appropriate and it's going to link together perfectly with what you're talking about. And they want to know about Hiram Abiff. Let's see. I was wondering if you knew about. All right, let's see here. The architect killed by 3 ruffians. Okay, this is a Masonic legend,
Freemasonry
right?
came out of the Vatican. Freemasonry was born, nurtured, and raised in the Vatican by the Knights Templars, the Knights of the Temple of Solomon. The Knights of the Temple of Solomon have dominated the whole human race. And so what we call the Vatican is actually an ancient secret society that came out of the ancient world. And today, America is the Roman Empire. And like the Roman Empire, we are now in decline and we're now falling. I mean, it's just an incredible story of betrayal of the human family and betrayal of the Americans who died trying to keep us free, and the people who served in the military to protect this country are now in the military to protect the elites and the Roman Empire. They're not doing anything. The military in America are not allowed to do anything to protect the American people. They are bought and paid for by the government that runs the world. They run the earth out of New York, the international banking cartels. And boy, when you start getting into the history of a world that we live in and where the wars have come from and who finances them and what the military today is doing in America, they're not doing anything to protect the American people. The military in this country is a disgrace because they have been taken over by our enemies. Our enemies run our country. Our enemies are not at the door. They run the country. And today, the military is not doing anything to protect America. I mean, even when the president wants to send the military to do something to protect our borders, the whole democratic process, rant and raves, they want to kill the president, get rid of him. They don't want this country protected. The military is doing what they're told to do because they're bought and paid for. And this is why I'm just amazed at what we call the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Who are these guys we call the Joint Chiefs of Staff? The heads of the Army, the head of the Navy, the head of the Marines, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They are the military head in this country. And what have they done to defend our republic? Zero, nothing. They're on the take. They're a scummy group. As far as I'm concerned, the Joint Chiefs of Staff represents treason in America. Where are the troops to protect the American people from the enemies of America? They just wine and dine themselves and get their stars and little brownie points and wear their little badges and do zero, nothing to protect the American people from the enemies of this country. And it's extraordinarily incredible that the people today in America do not see that the military is out all over the world for the elites who run this operation we call America. And the military is out all over the world doing the will of the elites who run this country. From behind the scenes, the secret societies have the power to control the military-industrial complex.
Right, and this is why when you ask yourself, well, this is why when people ask themselves, it doesn't make any sense that the military is doing this. Well, that's because you're still thinking that the military is there to serve and protect you. That's what your problem is. Because otherwise, if you stop thinking of it that way, it might make a whole lot more sense as to why we're going into certain nations and doing certain things. And here's the thing about that. Beyond the military, though, and one could again, you can draw corollaries throughout the rise and fall of the Roman Empire to exactly what Jordan's talking about. I think that would be an interesting discussion one day to have the comparative timeline between the United States and Rome, as it were. Yep. And hey, look, century 1 to century 3. Okay, that really represents the first 50 years of America's existence. This kind of thing. I'm not saying that that's a direct correlation. I'm saying that as an example, that would probably be almost right. But what's interesting here is that that's all true. But I want to get to this because this is a multifaceted question here, and it links again to the fact that you're talking about the Knights Templar and which were the guys, the red shields, so to speak, the Red Cross, which we still see today on the white background. Those guys, okay. Well, here's the thing. They want to know if Freemasonry actually comes from a Christian facility. And as you just stated, it comes from the Vatican. So there's that. Let's see. Also, on a side note, they're asking about certain things that they've read in esoteric volumes that have occasionally leaked out of the Freemason book collections, if you will. Now, I've seen one of these Bibles, Jordan. I've only seen one in one person's possession in my lifetime, but fascinating thing. Have you ever seen a Freemason Bible?
Oh yeah, I've got one. Yep. Okay,
so you know what I'm talking about. It is nothing like the Bible you find in your church. Just so you know, wholly different illustrations and style to it, Jordan. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
But they ask about Hiram Abiff, the connection to that, the connection to the to what is encoded in the Bible of the Freemasons about him. Is he just another figure very much like the Moses figure, who they're also asking, is that character more of an Islamic figure than a whatever? I think that you have exhaustively gone through that in the past on this show, but if you'd like to address it again. But what of the figure of Hiram Abiff? Do you figure that is yet again another made-up sort of character?
Yeah, of course. It's just a made-up myth. It's just a made-up story, just like all the great stories of religion today are all just as I've said before, they are stories. They are metaphors. They are symbolic metaphors, symbolic stories that are trying to tell you something. They're telling you something in secret. And so all the stories in the Bible, I believe, are metaphors. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, and you can think what you want. I don't care what you think. It doesn't matter what you think. What matters is what is the actual history of the religious belief systems in America and in the world today. When you do some serious, intellectually honest research, you will find that 99% of all the stories in religions are nothing more than made-up metaphors. Mankind has come up with their own stories, and they put in these stories all kinds of so-called history which never happened, and today we are living by these same metaphors and symbolic stories that never happened. Today we have Jews all over Jerusalem and all over Israel going to what they call the Wailing Wall. And they are there at the Holy of Holies. The most holy place in all of Jerusalem is the Wailing Wall. Why? Because it's the wall of King Solomon. It's King Solomon's temple. Well, first of all, there was no King Solomon. And second of all, the wall that we call the Wailing Wall is a Roman fort. The Romans built that wall. It was part of a Roman fort called Fort Antonia. Go do some research and you'll find the Wailing Wall does not have anything at all to do with Judaism or Jews, period. That's why today the Jews are crying and calling out to God and praying and putting their prayers on the wall, never realizing it's a Roman wall, it's a Roman fort. Go back to your encyclopedia and do something really strange. Read a book about Fort Antonia.
Right.
Fort Antonia is a Wailing Wall of a Roman fort that has nothing to do with Judaism at all. And this is why, precisely why, the Jewish world is crawling on their knees to the Wailing Wall and crying out to God at the Wailing Wall, and nothing but bloodshed and war and violence. The more people pray, the worse our situation begins to grow. The worse we're getting every day with wars and drugs and conflicts all over the world, because the human race cannot wake itself up to realize that the religious institutions that we humans have put together are based on ancient, prehistoric, and ancient symbols and words and terms that have been given to us by the secret societies who have founded the Roman Empire. They've founded the Roman Church. They have founded Judaism. Mm-hmm. They have founded, these secret societies have actually founded the Islamic world. The whole story of Muhammad and the Islamic religion is nothing more than a very ancient, old pagan religion going back thousands of years before Muhammad and Islam ever existed. It's been known by people who teach these subjects in universities and colleges. But the people out on the street, they don't know. They've never been told. There was no King Solomon. So you couldn't have King Solomon's temple if there was no King Solomon. It never existed. Well, there was no King David. There was no King David. Right. And best part is that there was never, ever an ancient Israel. So when you hear preachers and ignorant preachers talking about this and that happened in ancient Israel, and the ancient Israel did this and that, and the Lord did this with the ancient Israelites, there was, in fact, historically speaking, no ancient Israel ever existed. Period. End of sentence. And you need to wake up and find out that you have bought into a story that was not true, just as all the other religions have given you stories that are not true. You have something we call Christmas for Christianity, and we have churches and houses at Christmas who put Christmas lights on the trees and Christmas lights on the houses. But then the Jews also have a celebration at the same identical time at the winter solstice. They call it the Festival of Lights. The Festival of Lights for Jews. Well, isn't it interesting that the Festival of Lights is precisely what Christians do? They light up Christmas trees, they light up their houses, they light up their homes, they light up their businesses. It's a festival of lights. It has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. The Festival of Lights in Judaism is nothing but an ancient pagan celebration of the sun coming back and the sun dying in the winter in the south, going down to the southern hemisphere. The sun dies in the southern hemisphere, and then when it comes back to life in December 25th is when it moves one degree northward. They celebrate the sun is now born again. And therefore, there's a story about a man they called Jesus. He was referred to as God's Son. S-U-N, not S-O-N. God's Son, though he was he is the light of the world. Well, of course, the S-U-N is the light of the world. Christianity is the worship of the sun. And the Jewish religion is a potluck dinner. The whole of Judaism is a collection of all of the old ancient cults of the ancient prehistoric world, all rolled into one neat religion. It's called Judaism. It's actually the worship of the sun. It's actually the worship of the moon. It's the worship of the stars. It's the worship of Saturn. It's the worship of, it's filled with all kinds of ancient pagan religions, all molded into one called Judaism. And we look at Judaism as something very important. It's the actual basis for our religion. And Christianity goes back to the ancient Israel. Ancient Israel never existed. There was no King Solomon. There was no King David. One of the oldest Bibles I had many years ago, I can't remember the name of the Bible, but in this old translation of the Bible, everywhere in the Old Testament that it spoke about King David, it didn't say King David in this old translation. It said King Druid, not D-A-V-I-D, D-R-U, Druid. King Druid, not David, D-A-V. It was a Druidian. Druidian goes back to the worship of the sun and sun worship and the worship of the gods in India. Druidian, not David. And so Judaism and Christianity and Islam are all three based on Hindu. So if you want to worship the original God, go back to the Hindu temples and worship there, because that's what you're doing if you're a Jew or a Christian today. You're worshiping an old, ancient Hindu concept of the powers of the universe. It's extraordinarily stuff that's been hidden for years, and it is now, I believe, an idea whose time has come to tell the people the truth. There is not any value in Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. They're all three based on Hinduism, and they're all three nothing more than the religion of a book. All three require a book, the Old Testament, or the New Testament for Christianity, or the Book of Islam for Islam. So it's all three called the people of the book. They need to have a book to base their religion on, a book, if you can believe it. And they are now having wars all over the world, bloodshed. The whole of mankind is crawling around on their knees in the dark, killing each other, dying of ignorance and ill-informed stupidity because of a book. Right. The Jews have a book, and the Christians have a book, and Islam has a book. They're called the people of the book. You just need to do some homework. You need to go onto the web and look up ancient pagan religions and find all the things that you believe in your religion today came out of India, came out of Egypt, came out of the Middle East. What a story. It's about time that people wake up. I've been trying to tell people what's going on this earth, and I've tried to do it tactfully. I've tried to do it without hurting people's feelings or causing them any hurt by telling them the truth. But I'm telling you, there's nothing left now. We've just sold our souls to the devil. We've sold our souls. We've sold our country out. We've sold our children out. We've sold our morals and ethics. We've been sold out a long time ago. And the only hope for the human race is that we wake up and say, no more of this crap. No more of this old ancient bull. I mean, the Jews have in the Old Testament that they were worshiping of the golden calf, the golden bull. Well, if you look in the Encyclopedia of Religion, you will find out that Jehovah, the great God of the Hebrews, was always pictured in the ancient world as a bull. This is where we get the idea that it's all a bunch of bull. It's all full of bull. Because Jehovah or Yahweh was always pictured as a bull worship. Why? Because the Jews were worshiping God in the age of Taurus, the constellation of Taurus the bull. And when the age of Taurus the bull ran out, and the new age that was coming in was called the age of Aries, Aries the ram. Moses comes down and sees the Jews worshiping Taurus the bull, and they said to Moses that we've always worshipped God with the golden calf for 150 years, over 2,000 years we've worshipped our God by the worship of a golden calf. The golden is the sun, and the calf is the bull. The golden calf is Taurus, the constellation of Taurus. When the sun is in the constellation of Taurus, you're worshiping the golden calf. And then when Moses comes down, he brings a new religion. Moses was in a brand new dispensation to the Jewish world. A new religion based on the next constellation of the zodiac, which is Aries, the ram. So now the Jews have to stop worshiping the golden calf, and now they have to blow the ram's horn, the shofar. And so today the Jews blowing the ram's horn. They think that's so holy and so, it's all very, very Jewish to blow the ram's horn. And they got grown men with long beards, old men who actually believe that they're doing something holy by blowing the ram's horn. It's incredible. The ram's horn comes back, we call it the shofar, goes back to the worship of Aries, the ram god. And so God is a father, and so in the ancient world, your father was Ab, A-B, and there was and the God of the ram god was your father. So the word is A-B-R-A-M, Abram. Abram becomes Abraham. Abraham had a wife called Sarah. No, the priesthood in India today is called Brahmins, and the Brahmins would not have anything to do with the common working class people. They call them untouchables. They don't want to touch or have anything to do in India with the regular common people. Why? Because the regular common people were just dirty, working class, unclean, unshaven, dirty, working class people. And the Brahmins were the high priest of God. They were referred to as God's holy nation, God's holy people. And they were told not to have anything to do with the working class regular people. So that's the same way today in Judaism. The Jews are God's chosen people. They're not to have anything to do with the Gentile people. Don't have anything to do with the Gentile people of the nations. Why? Because they're just a bunch of dogs. It's called goyim. Goyim in Hebrew means an animal, a bull or an animal or a cow. So therefore you are nothing more than an animal. And just as in India, the people of India are nothing more than just dogs and animals to the priest of the Brahmins. And you put an A in front of Brahmin, it becomes Abram. Abram. And therefore in the Bible it says Abram was Abraham's name until it was changed. Abraham God changed Abram's name to Abraham. So therefore Abraham and his wife Sarah. No, the India religion today, the Brahmins have a goddess in their religion. The Brahmins know about a goddess in their religion called Saraswati. Saraswati is the same as Abraham and Sarah. Abraham is a Brahmin, or Abraham, and Sarah is Saraswati, the goddess, the holy goddess in the Brahmin religion. Wake up and understand that the world we call today the world of religion is actually the world of ignorance, ill-informed, unread stupidity, and that's why today all over the world, Christians and Jews and Islamic people are praying for holiness, they're praying for justice, they're praying for peace, they're praying for protection to their gods, and all the time they're praying, the bombs are dropping and the bloodshed is pouring over the earth. Why? Because they are praying to the same old pagan gods that we've always been sucked into. The people today are still worshiping the same paganry they've always worshiped, and they have no idea in the world what they're doing, and they don't want to hear the truth. I told you.
Yeah, and you know what the bottom line is here is that, you know, when you talk about a people that are blowing the ram's horn, that are praying to Ares, well, you know, I do remember in my study of Greek orders that Ares is the god of war. So, you know, and meanwhile, when you take a look at the different adaptations, the different interpretations of that same deity throughout history, it's the god of war. So you're praying for peace to the god of war. Gee, I wonder why there's struggles. And actually, we have questions. And this is a thought that occurred to me many years ago, but it's something that has been put into further context with my guest, Jordan Maxwell. We're going to take a break here, but I do advise you to go to jordanmaxwellshow.com to follow up even more on this. We're going to have another hour with Jordan here on this particular